Well, hey everyone. Welcome to episode 341 of F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen with your host, Matt Payne. This week, I had a very enjoyable conversation with Swedish photographer Anders Spetz. Anders was a successful CEO of a chemical company before an incredible car accident completely transformed his life. Through photography, Anders engaged on a long path of self-exploration and made several significant changes in his life, including choosing a more simplified life over his life as a CEO. In today's episode, Anders shares his remarkable story, which I believe will leave you inspired and re-energized for photography. Before we get going, I have one more incredible person to thank for financially supporting the podcast on Patreon, Paul Perugia. Paul joined our community of awesome supporters who are helping to keep the podcast ad-free with weekly episodes since 2017. You're awesome, Paul. All right, let's get to this week's episode with Anders Spetz. All right, Anders Spetz, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Great to be here, Matt.
Yes. Thank you so much for reaching out and being so thoughtful with some of the things that you want to talk about today. I'm always impressed when people have their ducks in a row and they've got some really great ideas.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for people that aren't familiar with you and your photography, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Sure, the standard stuff. 54 years old, not married, 3 daughters, 2 of my own and 1 bonus daughter. The oldest one is actually a photojournalist. Second one is now in university, and the third one is in high school. So I have a range. Been photographing for pretty much all my life. My grandfather was a passionate photographer. I saw him making images when I was 5-6 years old. Got my first camera around there, and then I made a lot of images when I was in high school and also in university. I was in the photo club there, all kinds of very artsy black and white work at the time. And then when the kids came, I stopped taking images. Luckily, my wife made all those birthday shots. So they have those images, and that's great. But I took a long break. Kids, and as you will hear, I've worked quite a lot over the years as well. I have been CEO of big corporations for 20 plus years. During that time, I didn't photograph so much because there were no time.
Right.
We will probably come to the critical point. I had a severe accident at one point, and after that I took up the photography again. It completely changed my way of living because I quit the corporate job and I started my own companies, etc. But I think we will get into that further down the line.
Yeah, for sure. And then in terms of the photography side of things, were you interested in landscapes and nature, or like kind of what was your path through photography? What's that been like?
I've always been out in nature. First without the camera and then with, so that's where like with many others, that's my passion for nature and being out in nature. That's where it started. And then I started to bring a camera. Trying to photograph, the animals, etc., and found that very challenging. And I also always was very interested in images, also, paintings, going to exhibitions, etc. So that I think those 2 interests made me look at landscape photography and also the way of expressing yourself through photography. But that came, I think, when I was in my 20s or 20 plus, something like that.
Okay. Well, let's dive into the meat of things here. I know that, like you mentioned, you've had some real challenges in your life, including your former wife having gone through recovery from alcoholism, and then you experiencing a very traumatic traffic accident. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about these events, and then we can talk about how they've transformed your life as a photographer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know a little bit since I've listened to a lot of your shows. I know a little bit about your background and what you have been working with before, until you now you're a full-time photographer, I guess. But yes, my former wife, she got sick with alcoholism, and she was pretty close to killing herself with it, unfortunately. And that was a really tough time for the family. And then during those years, I needed some outlet, somewhere where I could be just by myself and helping myself to survive in that kind of situation.
Sure.
And then photography was a really good way because of going into yourself and really taking care of what is inside, but maybe not as actively, more in the background, doing something calm and soothing and making you feel well. And that is also kind of a good medicine, I think.
Absolutely.
Then in the middle of everything, I was on the height of my career. I was having a lot of success. I came from a meeting in Zurich in Switzerland, a super successful meeting. Came back to Kastrup in Denmark on my way home to Sweden. I don't think I mentioned that, but I live in the southern part of Sweden in the Nordics. So I was on my way home. I remember that I drove there is a tunnel and then a bridge over to Sweden. I drove into the tunnel and then I put, my favorite music on the stereo, and I was, on the top of the world. And then everything was black. And then I was then hit by a young driver in a stolen car going 175 miles per hour in the tunnel.
Jeez.
He was actually said the police that he was filming his speedometer with his mobile phone. So he was not looking ahead, and he just crashed into me or my car. Of course, I blacked out, but there was video. So the ambulance people, they had seen the video. My car flying to the side of the tunnel, to the roof of the tunnel, and then down. I mean, it was...
it's like a movie.
Yeah. It was not a car anymore. It was a brand new car. It was a big brand new car. I won't, it doesn't matter what the brand, but it was, the best security systems available, and that saved my life. So the ambulance and the people were there, and, they were asking me, do you feel your fingers? Do you feel your toes? Sure, I have a sore thumb. Okay, lay still. We will put you in some kind of compression carrying thing to get you out. But I said, no, I feel good. So I stood up out of this wreck with a broken thumb. And they figured out later that I got some kind of, is it hernia in my neck? Mm-hmm. But that was it.
Really?
And the guys in the fire brigade, they said that this is less than 1%. I mean, you shouldn't be here. That's just. But I was, and then that was it. And I was. One day later, I was back at work, of course, because work was very important. But I was feeling really strange. I was in a board meeting and tears were starting to... I didn't understand what was going on at all.
Yep.
Then I told the chairman of the board that, I had this accident and something is not right. So, and then when I went to PTSD therapy, and the first thing that the therapist said was, have you been driving through the tunnel? I said, no, we do it now. So I went back and forth, the bridge and the tunnel, sweating like crazy.
Oh,
that was start of the journey back. but in combination with that therapy, there was, I think, 10 times of therapy. We started to discuss, what I could do to help myself to heal. And then I figured, okay, I love making photographs. So I discussed that with the therapist. How do we use this in the process? So we decided that every time, just after I had a therapy session, I had an hour to go to photograph. And that was, it was an amazing feeling because, I'm a very, I'm a doer. I like to fix things. So I wanted to fix myself really quickly because I need to get back to work.
Right.
But that hour of photography completely changed actually my view on myself, because I started to see myself through the images that I was making after these therapy sessions.
Yeah, and maybe you've got an example of what that actually looked like in terms of realizing that some of the images you were seeing were self-portraits.
Exactly. And I could see also, my feelings, because this was also, that as a therapist, that when a therapist asks someone like me, she started to ask me what I feel. And I don't know. But seeing my own images, I could actually immediately feel what I felt.
Do you have an example?
I often went to a very nice place close to the ocean where there are big waves. And the water was kind of this feeling of something hostile, so I was afraid. It's a dangerous place.
Right.
But when I was calm and when I was in control, I guess, I could see that I can handle this. It's not like I will be swept away into the ocean and I am dead. So that was the water became some kind of symbol for how I felt. And when I was photographing really stormy waters, that was usually also what was inside. And sometimes I put a 10-stop ND filter in and made the water like ice.
Sure.
Okay, then I was calm. So I kind of used that in a way. The water was me in a way in my images.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so you're going through this journey of self-healing and a little bit of self-discovery through making images. What kinds of realizations did you have about where you were at in life, and what changes did you make as a result of that?
Yeah. So after those sessions, I kept on working, but I think at the end and during the photography sessions, I made a decision that I'm going to change things. And I took my time. I took a break from therapy, but then after some months, I went back to the same therapist and said, I want to have 7 to 10 more just for myself, because there is a decision that starts to make form, kind of.
Yeah.
So I did that. And essentially, I should be dead, but I'm not. What do I want to do with the rest of my life? It's a little bit, I think, a sad story, but I'm honest. I would never have, been in that position if I didn't have the accident. But now I was there, and I could really feel that, in the beginning it was kind of funny, because it was like, okay, this morning cereal is fantastically good. I mean, you experience life in a very strong, intense way.
Yes.
Because you thought you shouldn't have it, but now you have it, so you have to feel everything very intensely. That, of course, that fades away. But actually, I decided that there are more things. I always studied a lot as well. I'm a scientist. I'm a chemical engineer by background. I think I stand on a solid scientific platform. Looking at, those long-term investigations where you ask old people, what would you change in life if you could? Very few say that, I should work more and I spend less time with my kids.
Right.
And, that's not the way it is, but you don't hear it. You don't hear it
That's right.
until something or someone open your eyes and ears and your senses for this. I made a decision to make a career change, but it was not dramatic. I talked to the chairman of the board and I said, this. He, of course, he knew about the accident, and he started crying because he said, Anders, you're doing what we are all thinking about doing. So we decided, okay, there is a year now, and I make everything that I should in that year, and then after 1 year I quit, and I start my own business instead. So that was kind of a long journey, but I made the leap, and today I'm running still my own companies and live a much, let's say, much more fulfilled life. If I'm honest, I was crazy in the beginning. I visited my brother and my sister. I haven't seen them in years. I forced my kids to spend a lot of time with me, even if it was more in my interest maybe than theirs. But no, my relation with my daughters are completely different than what it was before. I was the dad with probably in their view a big wallet, but never there. And now it's the other way around, if I'm honest.
Right, you're like, well, we can spend a lot of time together, but I can't pay for all the stuff we used to do.
Exactly.
But I'm sure you wouldn't go back.
No.
Yeah.
No, not a chance. And that's that's the honest. I haven't had any regrets. Not one day, not 1 minute. And this is it's a bit odd to me because I thought this is a big decision, but no, it's not really, because you only have so many days, so many weeks. I was throwing that away, kind of, before. I was not aware. I would have liked that to be kind of a conscious decision, but it wasn't. I just, I was just pushing to see how far I could go.
Right. Yeah, no, it's easy to fall into that trap, especially with modern society and consumerism and consumption and all of the things that we're constantly bombarded with from marketing to tell us what we should be buying and all of that stuff. So it totally makes sense. It's so easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, you've talked a little bit about how the role that photography played in helping you kind of make this transition. I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about what photography's role is now in kind of sustaining where you're at today.
Yeah. So, I very early on, I made a promise to myself that photography is not going to be business. It's not going to be my job. I'm struggling to keep that promise. But today I'm doing, so management consulting is my company job. And I work as a senior advisor. I work as a mentor for young CEOs early in their career. So that's my job. But I also now started to run together with another photographer as a partner. We run some photography workshops in combination also with retreats. And this is, has become my passion. This the way that photography can actually influence our lives. So today, my own photography is it's purely for my well-being. And sometimes, the workshops is only 3-4 times a year because I don't, this should not be my work. But we have had some amazing people in the workshops, and for me, that's to share these things and also let's say the deeper personal perspective on photography has given me so much. So it's really a win-win to be the leader of a workshop. But my own photography is pure pleasure.
Good. I love that you said you were struggling to keep your photography not a business pursuit, because I think so many photographers are worried about that in terms of somehow it's gonna, ruin your experience making images or whatever. So what have you done to kind of compartmentalize the business side from your personal work?
I think that goes back to my previous job, where I have always been very strict on what is, now I'm working, now I'm available for my daughters. So it's always been, and I do it the same way now. So yes, it's okay to work a little bit with photography, to run a workshop, but my own photography is my own, and that is also prioritized. So it's not like my own photography is when I have an hour available. No, I actually schedule I'm scheduling my time, even though I decide myself. But I can decide, okay, on Thursday I'm doing photography, and I shut off the phone, and it's only my photography. So I think that's it's a challenge, but I think that prioritization is important because you're prioritizing yourself.
Yeah.
It's so easy to fall in the trap of keep on giving and giving and giving. I mean, this classical thing that if you keep on giving, you have to, fill the bucket somehow as well to be able to keep on giving.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's interesting because as I heard you talking about the workshops, I could tell that you actually really get a lot of energy and other stuff out of doing the workshops because you're helping other people. And so I'm guessing for you that's actually serving a need for you to help others and things like that. So my guess, and maybe you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, is that while you were originally worried about photography becoming a business, you kind of have realized that you're getting a lot out of it by just putting in that energy as well.
Exactly. And then when we say photography, it's so many things. I mean,
right.
I'm a people-oriented person, and so are you. I mean, when we say photography, I mean, we meet a lot of great people, and you really, I mean, when you're on a cliff somewhere overlooking the ocean, and you are there, I mean, you have a true meeting, also.
Yes.
Where you can share many other things than the f-stop and the whatever filters you're using. Right. I mean, it's a superb way of meeting people on a deeper level.
Yeah, I mean, what I love about nature and landscape photography especially is it helps kind of cut through all the noise, and it brings everyone kind of down to earth, and then it distills everything down to the things that we find most important in our lives, and it makes it much easier to kind of just talk through what those things are, and you're having this shared experience, and the photography is just like the glue that holds that all together.
Yeah. And it could be something else, but now we love photography, so that's our playing field, so to speak.
Yep. Exactly.
I think that's also very true for me, that it's actually, for me in my photography, it's not at all really about the image. I'm really happy when sometimes it happens. The feeling when you're opening the memory card and yes, there it is. I mean, that's an unbelievable feeling. But it's doing the photography that is important to me. And it has become, I try to explain it like, it's like some people, they practice yoga, or you do meditation, or I do photography. And that process of actually doing photography, making images, is so beneficial for me. So it is the practice in itself that has the value. Then, on the rare occasion, the pops out an image that you're happy about.
Yes.
But for me, this has become like a practice. I make photography kind of an almost daily routine. It's not like I take one image every day, but for sure a couple of days every week I have a slot, not a full day maybe, but I have a slot for photography to keep the practice going, because that is also part of my photography experience, is that I don't want the camera and the technical stuff to be in the way of my experience.
Really important.
And in order to achieve that, I have to do it often, because it needs to be second nature. It cannot be something where I need to think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It'll come out next spring, but Cody from Nature Vision magazine sent me a bunch of questions last night about my Colorado Trail hiking experience, and one of the questions he asked me was about creative burnout, like 35 days of hiking. How did you stay motivated to make images? And one of the big pieces for me was what you had just talked about, that the less I had to focus on the technical aspects and just react to what I was finding myself in the process of responding and making images, to me that was enough to keep things going and to keep my creative juices flowing. Whereas I think if you're out of practice in photography, it's harder to get there creatively, because you're like, okay, I need, what f-stop do I need? Like, you're thinking more. Whereas I think if you want to really get more creative, you need to become so good at using your camera that it's all just intuition, and you're just responding and reacting in the moment.
Exactly. And that when I achieve that, so when I have had this schedule that I make photographs every week, then I also open up for the senses to guide me in what kind of images I'm going to make, because then I don't have to worry about the camera and the filters, etc. I know it's there, and I intuitively know that I will know how to use it. So then when I have time, I try to follow my own method, kind of, and I build that on using my senses. I know that this is absolutely not my own ideas. Many have thought a lot before me. I'm trying to be present in the spot where I am, and that can be just by hiking around. It can also be to lay down on the ground, or can be taking off the hiking boots and put the feet into the water, or somehow getting in touch with the place. And then usually I close my eyes, because there is so much information, visual information, especially if you're a photographer, it's overwhelming.
Yes.
But if you close your eyes, you can get in touch with your other senses. So suddenly, when your eyes are closed, you start to hear things. You start to smell things. And that is very inspiring to me. And that's where the image idea comes from then. When I'm in a really good place. I also have the occasions where I'm stressed, and I decide back home that now I'm going to this mountain and I'm going to take this image and it's going to be yes, I have that also. But when I do it in the way that I love, then I let this experience, then I hear the waves, or I kind of sense the smell of the algae, or something that I get an idea, and then I try to pursue that and make an image.
Yes.
When it works, those images, immediately as I see them, I'm back. It's
right.
kind of strange.
Like, oh man, that smell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's also how the brain works and how memories work. The more senses you have involved, the stronger the memory. So I try to play with that in my own favors.
Yeah, no, I'm very similar, and one thing I'm always struggling with is the smell because there's, especially when you're in the forest, there's always like this kind of rotting,
Hmm.
like just musty smell that I
Yeah,
actually just love it. Like especially if I'm in bogs or areas where
yeah.
there's like flowers growing and there's like lots of pollen in the air. It's like, whoa, I want to bottle this smell up and put it in my photograph. But I'm always like, how do I incorporate this into the image? That's the piece where I'm always like struggling
Exactly.
to find the way to do it. But it's such an awesome experience.
But it might not be necessary, Matt, to put it in the image because then you start to think about others, right?
Right,
So when you make that image and when you see it, you also smell it, right?
right,
So I
right.
think that it's a tall order to make that happen in someone else. But
Hmm.
it's good enough that it happens in us, in you.
Right. Yeah, and at the end of the day, who are you making the photograph for?
Exactly. So that's the point. That's why I think that I'm trying hard not to focus so much on the image itself, but the process,
Hmm.
and to be continuously working with my photography because this is like my mental exercise. This is my well-being engine, kind of.
Hmm. And
Uh,
I'm willing to bet that the images that are created when you're focused more on the process and the sensory inputs, those are probably your favorite photos by far.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that what I've seen also is that they are more interesting also to other people,
Mm. Hmm.
but they see completely different things or they
Right.
experience completely different things. And that's fine.
Correct.
That's fine.
Totally. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think that is fascinating.
But
Well, one
yeah.
one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about because you had mentioned it in our communication is this idea of combining writing with your
Mm.
images, and I'd be curious kind of what your approach is to combining writing with your photographs.
I think this is for me it was kind of the next step in the inspiration process because first I get these emotions or this sensory input, and then I feel something, but then I try to turn those feelings into some kind of idea, some kind
Mm-hmm.
of concept,
Mm-hmm.
and that I found very difficult to visualize that in the image, but if I can combine the image with some words. Uh, I get a much stronger feeling when I an experience when I see the image together with the text, and of course I realize that this is super strong for me because it's my image and my
Mm-hmm.
words.
Mm-hmm.
But I get a lot of feedback. I have an Instagram account, and actually, I think I get as many comments on what I'm writing than I get on my images. So it's also we as people we are kind of different in the way that some people take in a lot of information and feeling through the eyes or through the image, but
Sure.
others love the text. It moves something more in them, I think.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. Are you adding the text like long after you've kind of taken the image and you're ready to put it out there, or like what's the timing of when you're adding text?
That can vary a lot, but usually it is. I have a fairly short. It's not like I take an image. Usually I take an image and then I post it half a year later. Usually it's a couple of weeks
Okay.
between I make the image and I post it.
So it's fresh.
So it's pretty fresh and also what I'm writing is somewhat connected to the image, but I think that it's more connected to where I am when I'm writing.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yep.
So these two things, I think they work together. That when I see my own image, I remember some things, but now I'm 2 weeks later, so I'm a bit different, and I have other thoughts, and then that is what's coming out.
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to take some heat for this, but it always drives me crazy when people say that, oh, the image should speak for itself and it shouldn't have any words attached to it. And I just, personally, I think when I read what a photographer has to say about an image, it gives me so much more insight into them as a person. It gives me so much more insight into kind of what they were trying to convey through the photograph. I think it's just such a missed opportunity if you don't take the time to actually think about what you want to write about a photograph and what your experience was like when you captured the photograph, or maybe looking back on it a week or two or a month or a year later. How does it make you feel as the creator of the photograph? Like, those are all opportunities to not only connect with your image, but also to connect with your audience.
I'm with you all the way. I think it's also about trusting the viewer, right? Because I think they can handle that. You know, they see the image in their way, and if they want to, they take the written in, but they don't have to.
Exactly.
And why leave that to the viewer? It's trust them.
Right. And it honestly drives me crazy when I see people post images with like no writing attached. It's just like, or like something really ridiculous, like here's a photo of a tree. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Give me a little bit more to go with here. Let's talk about your image. Like, what did you see here? What is this image about for you? Like,
Yeah.
or is it literally just a photo of a tree and that's all you feel about it? Because if that's it, I don't know if that's very impressive.
I don't know. Maybe this is confrontative, but I think that if you think that your image is so super expressive that you don't have to or should say anything, I mean, fine. But I think that I love the connection that I get with the viewer, and I respect the viewer. And I know that many appreciate the text, and if you don't want the text, you skip it.
Yeah. And I don't know about for you, but oftentimes I find that process of writing about the photograph helps me kind of rediscover what was going on subconsciously for me. Because oftentimes I find when I'm in the field and I'm capturing an image, sometimes I recognize that there might be a metaphor in the image, but oftentimes I'm just responding to something that's catching my attention, and I don't recognize exactly what else happening yet. And when I sit down to write about it, I often find myself connecting with the image in a different way. Like, oh wow, I didn't realize this at the time, but this photograph actually has all of these other meanings attached to it that I think are very interesting now that I'm looking at it and writing about it. So I just think it's a really fun process. So.
Agreed, and I think also that this is I see a lot of similarities with my decision making in my earlier life, because if you have a really complex situation to handle, but you need to take a decision, you cannot sit down and think intensively, to find that decision. It doesn't work. So you take all the variables, you throw them. I throw them in the back of my head, and then I go out jogging or photographing or doing something, and then it clarifies. The decision clarifies. Mm-hmm. I think this is the same thing happening in your image making when it's your subconscious is talking to you through the image.
Yes.
And when you feel that, then it's, I think, good for you and for me to put that down in text.
No, I agree. I think oftentimes for some people that either don't like to do it or don't think highly of that process, I think maybe it's because they don't feel comfortable in their writing skills, or You know, maybe they haven't spent a lot of time writing. So if anything, if I was in their shoes, I would just try to reframe the situation and see it as an opportunity to develop develop my writing skills. You
Yeah.
know, and
I think, as always, whatever is fine. I mean, whatever rocks your boat. But I think that can be a missed opportunity, learning things about yourself.
I agree. Yeah. Well, and not everyone has that goal in their photography. Some people just want to take
Right.
images and throw them up on Instagram and see what happens. I
Yeah.
mean, that's totally fine as well. But
Absolutely.
if you want something else, there's other things you can try as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about marketing, because I know you had talked earlier about not necessarily wanting your photography to have a business component to it, but obviously you're doing workshops and things of that nature. So what are your thoughts on marketing and photography?
I think that again, it's of course it's up to every individual and the individual situation. I don't earn my living from my photography, so in that sense, I can choose to do it in whichever way I want. When people ask me, I sell prints. Yes, I run some workshops. I also do individual mentoring or support, and that started with people that wanted a career change or wanted to develop their business life, but it has turned into discussing photography and images as well. I think for me, since I don't want to make this a big company, for me, person to person communication is enough. But I realized that if I would earn my living from it, I had to think more like the old Anders, understanding how a P&L works, and but I think that it can be fine also that you take only the few things that you are really passionate about, and not trying to maximize everything. In my mentorship, I only have today I only have 3 clients, and they have been with me now between 3 months and more than a year. And it's the same, I think, with should I take on new clients? It would be because this person really wants to change something in their situation, either on the work side or on the private side or on the photography side. But if it is a significant change, like I took more than a year to be ready to take the decision.
Right.
You cannot do these major changes in 3 sessions on Zoom and 2 weeks and you're done.
Right.
We don't work like that as human beings, and
Right.
I want to be acknowledging that in the way I'm working.
So what are your methods for marketing what you currently offer?
So the only marketing I do is via Instagram and via peer-to-peer. So this is how it works. Mouth to mouth is for me the absolute best method, because it has intrinsically it has a lot of prioritization in it. Because if one of my clients talks to someone else recommending me, that says a lot, both about all 3 involved, if you know how I'm thinking.
Yep, that makes sense.
That already there's a high chance of success.
Right.
So that's I encourage the people that I work with, if they have friends or colleagues, or to take that discussion, and that has worked perfectly for me.
I love it. Well, speaking of all that, tell us about the one-on-one sessions that you do have available for people.
So I thought about that when I was coming on the show that of course I would love if there is someone that is having this kind of situation that they want to make a significant change, but they might be it's unclear how
Right.
that,
Or they're stuck.
or they're stuck. I mean that I would be happy to help, but it's a thing where you work together, and it's not a 2 week thing, because I will invest, and the person also have to invest their time, but more their mental focus and my mental focus. But I am available. I could do what I do with my clients today. I could do with a few more. I'm easy to reach. I guess you will put my email address into the show notes, and it's easy. anders.spetz@hotmail.com. Yes.
There you go.
I'm that old, so I have a Hotmail address.
That's
So,
funny.
yeah.
At least it's not AOL.
No. But yeah, we could talk a lot about those early. I was in university when ICQ and
Oh yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Messenger, ICQ.
Yeah.
I remember all that with
Yeah.
the little flower that had the. I remember those days. Oh yeah.
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 It's fun.
That's funny. All right. Well, last question for you. Who do you recommend for the podcast?
Yes, I thought a lot about that. I think that very early in my process, I found Helene Schmitz. She's a Swedish photographer. I don't think that she would agree that I say that she's a landscape photographer, but she is. But she's walking, between the genres. So it's a lot of landscape, but it's also definitely fine art. She's a great storyteller. I know that she's exhibiting in all kind of nice places. So she's a well-known name in Sweden, but I haven't seen so much on the international scene. So it would be absolutely great to hear her talk about, how her creative process, and how she has become such an excellent storyteller, because this is what we all photographers what we want, and she's superb in that respect.
I love it. Well, Anders, I have one more topic that I want to talk to you about, which is all about flow states, but we're going to do it for our Patreon supporters. So if people are interested in hearing us talk about flow states, you can check that out at patreon.com/fstop and listen. But for now, we'll go ahead and sign off on the main episode here. So thank you so much for your time, and I love your journey. I think it's very inspiring, and I think a lot of people can get a lot out of really paying attention to what you've done to transform your life.
Big thank you to you, Matt. I mean, I love your show, and I learn a lot from listening, and I get really inspired by all the people that you have had on. And I'm looking forward to the coming episodes as well. Maybe not this one.
Right. Yeah, no one ever likes to hear their own voice. Trust me.
Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you to Anders for sharing your story with us. I found it interesting, inspiring, and very thoughtful. Keep up the great work. If you too have a story to share and want to chat with me on the podcast about it, don't be shy. There is a form on the podcast page of my website at mattpaynephotography.com where you can pitch your idea for a podcast. I love getting these emails because it means that you're already interested about something and you want to share your thoughts with the world. Be brave and join the likes of Anders and the other 300 plus guests that we've showcased here on the podcast. That's all for now. Thanks for stopping in, collaborating with us, and listening. See you next week.